Well, it's Wednesday again, so time for another clip. Today's clip is from a call early last week with a business owner who's implementing the strategy of cold calling in his business. And he was struggling to understand why when he tried to cold sell, that is, get on the phone with someone through a cold call and try to sell to them directly, it wasn't working the way he wanted. We went over the concept of the difference between cold calling and cold selling. Here's the clip.
I understand what you mean. What I'm curious to know is, I know you mentioned you're struggling with cold calling, but are you cold calling or are you cold selling? Okay, let me explain. So cold calling is simply the process of calling someone you don't know. It's calling someone who's a cold contact, someone you've never had a previous touch point with. Cold selling, on the other hand, is a subset of cold calling where, in addition to calling someone you don't know, you're actually trying to sell them something. So in the situation you described, what you're struggling with, is it specifically cold calling or is it cold selling? Okay, yeah, that's sort of what I thought. So what I'd suggest is leaning more towards cold calling than cold selling. Now, cold selling is it's a completely different beast, and I'm fairly certain no one likes getting cold calls that are cold sales. Whereas people will frequently enjoy cold calls if they create value for them. So what I mean by that is, when you're cold calling, the fundamental focus should be to build a relationship with the person you're contacting, to understand them, to qualify them, not to sell to them. You don't want to sell to them in that first cold call. Now, there are some rare circumstances where what you're selling, you know exactly that that person is someone who's interested, but most cases those are warm calls. So those are people have opted in, they're part of some list, they've taken some action to indicate that they want to be sold that product, which doesn't make them cold anymore. It makes them warm, or lukewarm, or however you want to classify it. But when it comes to cold calling, when you are first reaching out to a prospect, they don't know anything about you, they don't know what your product is, they don't know what your service is, they don't know what your offer is, you don't even know if they're qualified to purchase your product or service. You should not be trying to sell to them. One fantastic example my sales coach used to give me was, think of, when you go out on a date. When you go out for your first date, what would happen if you asked the person if you propose to the person? You had a great hour, 2, 3 hour long date, and then all of a sudden you get down on one knee and propose, right? What would they think? Yeah, you're right. You probably get some strange looks, and there's a high probability you probably never hear from that person again. It's a similar experience when you're trying to cold sell to someone you just cold called, right? You have just introduced yourself. They just became aware of who you are before they had an opportunity to learn more about your product or your service. You're trying to propose to them. You're trying to get them to give you their money, right? Which from a business perspective is very similar to, when a life partner says yes. Now, a lot of people don't cover this, but I mean, I don't want to go into too much depth on it, but essentially the reality of the situation is it's much harder to end a business relationship than it is to end a marriage. And it's unfortunate that's how it is, but that's the reality of it, right? So when you cold call someone and you're attempting to sell to them instantly on the phone, you've spoken to them maybe 90 seconds and you get your pitch in, there's a high chance it's not going to work, because it's not a good experience. Because to that customer's perspective, they see you as just chasing the money. They see you as not really focused on delivering value. And I know there are some exceptions, and there are people out there that are exceptionally good at it, and there are specific services and products that might be a good fit for it. But fundamentally speaking, overall, cold calling is about calling someone you've never spoken to and building a relationship with them, doing the foundations of that relationship rather than trying to sell to them. Does that make sense? Yeah, I understand what you mean. It can be very time consuming, but if you focus on shifting, cold calls from trying to get a sale, what you'll start to find is people are going to be more engaged, because the types of conversation you have, you're not going to be rushing to get them to a point where they say yes or no to buy your stuff, and then you try and get them on the phone. It's disingenuous. People know. People can pick up on it. I'm sure you've received calls, and within the first 5 or 10 seconds, you go, "This guy's going to sell me something. I'm just not interested." Right? Whereas if you get a call about someone trying to show interest in you, trying to understand, "Hey, you know what? I saw on your website you guys do SEO. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?" If they start to qualify themselves, if they start to assess in that cold call, is this someone I need to sell my product or service to? It creates a fundamentally better experience. And the same will happen if you focus on creating a similar experience for your potential clients when you cold call them, right? So the objective of a cold call, I think the best objective to have from a cold call is to set up another call, a longer call, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, or an hour if it's the right fit. But that first call is literally just to validate, qualify. Is this person a potential customer? If they are a potential customer, what sort of services or products that I have will they need? And to what extent will the amount of value I create to them need to be integrated in their business? What I mean by that is, a lot of times the products or services or what you offer need to be customized for that specific business, just a little bit. In that cold call, what you want to do is you want to assess how sophisticated are they as a customer. Where do they fall within the target customers that you have? Do they have money to buy your services? You don't want to spend 3 weeks going through a sales process with someone who fundamentally can't buy from you, right? So that first call is really about just assessing, is this someone I want to build a relationship with? You want to build relationships with customers that have money, that are eligible to buy your services, right? You don't want to build relationships with people that are fun, that, that's a personal thing that has nothing to do with your business, right? So when you're cold calling, what I would encourage you to do is focus on really trying to identify and understand that customer, learn more about their business, right? Learn more about if your product or service is a good fit. And if it's not, no harm, no foul. Just, you can end the call right there. Be like, you know what? I really appreciate you spending some time to explain your business. This is what I do. I don't think it's a right fit. Give them an opportunity to say yes or no. But fundamentally, most people will appreciate that. Most people will enjoy that because it's so different from all the other cold calls that they get, right? So again, I suggest focusing on cold calling rather than cold selling. And I'm sure what you'll start to see is a difference in your motivation and a difference in the way the conversations go. Does that make sense?
I hope you found that clip useful. In the comments below, let me know, have you ever heard of the difference between cold calling and cold selling before? If you're a freelancer or business owner who's struggling to get clients predictably, in the description below, you'll find a link for a complimentary one-on-one strategy session with me. We'll dive deep into what you're trying to do this year and outline a step-by-step plan to get you where you want to be. As always, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe. I release more videos like this every Wednesday.